welcome to the first Connected Falkirk and STEM Falkirk asynchronous code along. In this session, we will teach you how to use the video sensing feature within Scratch to blend the physical and digital worlds seamlessly to create an interactive animation or game. My name is Lauren and I'm an Education Support Officer for Falkirk Council, where I work with schools on digital learning and STEM, and you'll be following along with me today to code a game in Scratch. Please feel free to pause the video at any time if you want some more time to follow any of the steps or make sure that everyone in your class is caught up to the right place in their code before moving on. Video sensing is a feature in Scratch that you might not have used before. Essentially, it uses a video camera, such as the camera on your device, as a sensor that can detect motion and in some cases colour. When used in Scratch, it allows you to combine digital animations with physical interactions using moving objects like yourself. Video sensing allows you to see virtual characters overlaid in the real world, and you can be super imaginative with these and use it to create imaginative stories or interactive games. Your input of some kind into your Scratch game is yourself or the movement that you put into the camera, and the output is the animation or the game that will respond in some way. If that doesn't make sense just now, don't worry, we're going to give it a try just now and you'll basically catch up quite quickly and realise how easy it is. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to open Scratch, so either the app or the website. If it's your first time using Scratch, I'm going to give you a quick tour of how you start to make your Scratch program. So I'm going to go to scratch.mit.edu, so it'll be the first one when you search on Google or Safari or whatever you're using as your browser. Then we want to go to the top left hand side where it says create, and we want to tap that. It'll tell you it's creating your project and it'll take a few seconds to open a screen that should look exactly like this. So let's have a quick tour of this screen if you've not used Scratch before. So on the left hand side are all the commands that we have access to. So these are all different coloured menus and I will refer to them by their colours and their name. So we have motion, which is blue, looks, which is purple, etc, etc. Within each of these menus there are blocks, so blocks of code that we are going to use. If we want to use a bit of code, what we do is we take our finger, we touch it, and we drag it over into this middle section where we put all of our code. So this is our coding section here, and this is infinite, and you can drag and drop as many different bits of code in as you want, and they can be beside each other or arranged vertically, whatever works for you. Now if I decide I don't want this bit of code anymore, I just pick it up again and I drop it back over on the left hand side to delete it. Some other things to point out is on the right hand side we have our stage. So at the moment you can see Scratchcat, which is currently on the stage at the minute, and this is where our game or our animation plays out. We try to test as we go along with our coding, and to do that we always will hit the green flag at the top right hand side. Now if I hit it at the moment, nothing's going to happen because I don't have any code behind it, but by tapping the green flag it'll then play through our code and show us whatever we've coded in this little screen on the right hand side. On the right hand side at the bottom we have our pane where we have our sprites. At the moment we only have one sprite or one character or thing that is in our code, and that is just Scratchcat. We can delete this, we can add different ones, but I'll show you how to do that in a little while. And on the bottom right hand side we have the bit that says stage and backdrops. This is where we can set the backdrop for our animation or our game. So that's really the basics of what this looks like or how it looks. I'll go into detail later on about how you save and various other things like that, but at the moment we'll just start with the blank screen. Now in order to use video sensing we have to add an extension set of blocks. It's actually not available on the ones that are already there on the left hand side. To do this we need to go to the bottom left of the screen and click the purple button with the two blocks and the plus at the top right. So it should be right in the bottom left hand corner of your screen. If we tap that, you're going to get a menu that's called Choose an Extension. Now there'll be lots here that you maybe haven't played with before, but at the moment we're just going to focus on the one that says Video Sensing, Sense Motion with the Camera. So if we tap that, that's going to give us a new group of blocks on the bottom left now that contains 4 blocks, and we're going to run through what each of these does as we put it into our code. Now what you might notice, if this is the first time that you're adding this set of blocks, it'll ask you if Scratch can access your camera. We want to click Allow. And you'll see when that happens that on the top right hand side of your browser it's going to show you a little camera symbol, and you can see behind Scratchcat now is a camera. Now I'll talk a little bit later on about where you want your camera to be facing, but at the moment we can just leave it wherever it is. But you can see that mine is pointing at the ceiling and you can see me waving there at the moment. Now don't get distracted by that just now. We're now going to go on and have a look at these 4 blocks of code that we now have added to our backpack. So as always, when we want to create a game or animation in Scratch, we always want to start with the block when green flag clicked. And that is found in the events menu, which is yellow. So on the left hand side, we want to find the one that says events. We want to tap that, and once we've tapped it, we then want to go to the top one that says when green flag clicked, and we want to drag this block over into our coding area and drop it. Now what that means is when we're ready to start the game or the animation, we click the green flag above the stage and that'll start our code running. If we're using video sensing, we then want to make sure that the camera is turned on. So we want to tap the video sensing block at the bottom left hand side that we've just added, and we want to find the block that says turn video on. And we want to drag that black block over, and we want to clip it just underneath when green flag clicked. We don't want to stick it down here because that means the code isn't going to run together. So we want to put it just there. Now you notice there's a drop down menu here, and you can basically turn the camera on or off because maybe at one point in your code you actually want it to be off at the start. I might switch it to off at the moment just so that my camera isn't going to show when it starts running. So you can see there it's now turned off, or I can flip it back on, and then when I tap the green flag it's going to turn back on. So what this does, this block here, is it means that when we hit the green flag, the camera is going to turn on in the background, and this adds our camera feed to the backdrop of our game screen. The next one we want to look at is video transparency. So essentially this is how much we can see ourselves, or the video on the stage is automatically set to 50 when we do this. So you can see the one here that says set video transparency to 50. So if we drag this over and put it under turn video on and then tap the green flag, you'll be able to see my hand, but what you'll be able to see here is that actually it's a little bit opaque. So it's a little bit kind of faded, slightly faded effect here when it's set at 50. So what you can do is you can change this. So you can do any number between 0 and 100, with 0 giving a completely clear picture. So I'll show you that. So I tap it, turn it to 0, and that gives it a completely clear picture here. When I tap this, you can see how it's changed. Or I could put 100, and if I put 100 and I click the green flag, you can't see anything. So 100 means that the video is completely gone from the background. Now it's still actually sensing the video, so it'll still sense motion, detect motion there, but what it won't do is you won't be able to see what you're actually doing. So you can play around with this or come back to it and change this whenever it suits you. But basically at the moment, I'm going to change this example to, we'll go for 75 for me at the moment, and tap the green flag. So it means it's opaque, but I can still see what I'm doing. I can still see my hands there. Next, you can use the when video motion block to set the video sensitivity. Now what I mean by this is when you want the animations or sprites to react to the movement or you, what do you want to have to do for that to happen? What I mean is if you want to move a little bit and it to pick up on a tiny movement, then you want to set your sensitivity so it's very high. If you don't want it to do anything or respond to little tiny movements, but you want it to respond to big movements, like my hand waving across the screen, you want to set that video sensitivity to be quite low so that it doesn't just go off as soon as you make a tiny movement on the screen. So what we want to do is we want to take the when video motion greater than 10 block, and we want to put this down here. Now at the moment, that is quite sensitive and can even detect something like blinking. So it can be useful to play around with this number to work out the best value for your project. The value is automatically set at 10 by default, but that is pretty sensitive, so it can be difficult to have any control over motion sensing when you have such a low value. As I said, that means that any tiny movement, whether it's me moving a tiny little bit or a shadow or someone behind me, might set it off. So again, you might want to tinker with this and see what works best for you and for your game. So we'll do a quick little example with this in a wee second, but I'm just going to set it a little bit higher at the moment. I think I'm going to set it as 20, but you can decide what works best for you. So what we want to do is we want to practice using video sensing at the moment, just using a really basic bit of code. So we've got a Scratch Cat already here, we've got our sprite, and when I wave over the area covered by Scratch Cat, I'll want him to say hello. To do this, we're going to add a purple block, so one of the look blocks, that allows us to say hello for 2 seconds. So we're going to go to looks, which is the purple set of blocks on the left-hand side, and the top one should say hello for 2 seconds. So we're going to drag this over, and we're going to put it under when video motion detected, because we don't want it to say hello when the video turns on. We want it once we start feeling motion on it. So if we try this out, if I tick the green flag again, and nothing's happening at the moment, but if I wave my hand over Scratch Cat, you can see that he then says hello for 2 seconds. Okay, so give it a try. Pause the video here for a couple of seconds and see if everyone can get Scratch Cat to say hello by waving over the top of them. Now at this point, I'm going to give you a couple of tips about video sensing. You'll notice that I'm not in my video. I have my iPad flat on the desk with the camera pointed towards the ceiling. I'm doing this on purpose so that nothing accidentally moves in the background when I'm using video sensing and sets it off. You can do this too if you want to, or you can have your camera pointing towards you, whether you're standing up or sitting down in the video. Depending on the type of game or animation that you want to make, this can be a really good way to do it. But remember that any movement, including you or someone moving behind you, will set it off, especially if your sensitivity is up very high that we talked about earlier. So remember, that's when the number is really low. So if you find when you start making a game that it keeps going off and basically it sets it off when you weren't even trying to set it off, then it might be worth making sure your camera is facing you and you don't have anyone behind you, or put it flat on the table like I've done and just use your hand to set it off. Another little tip is if you want to make a game later and you want to be in the video, it's better when you start your game if you stand back from your camera so more of your body is in the frame, and then you can use your hands to make the camera detect your movement, like when we're popping balloons like we'll do later on. So moving on, in this example, it doesn't have to say hello. We could set this up so that each time we wave over him, he maybe moves using some motion blocks, or maybe he plays some sound using the sound blocks. You could turn it into a game where there are 2 of you and you need to hit a ball back and forward across the screen. There are so many things that you can do with video sensing, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how creative and imaginative you can be later on when I set you your challenge at the end of the video. But to get started with a proper game today, we are going to make a balloon popping game. So I'm going to show you quickly the example that I made earlier. So in this example here, you can see that every time I move my hands over a balloon, it makes a popping sound and it pops the balloon. And basically what's happened here is I've got a score set, so it counts how many balloons it popped, and it also has a countdown timer where it counts down from 10 seconds down to 0 and then stops the game. So this is the game that we are going to be making today. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to open, I'm just going to get rid of this one here, open Scratch again. So obviously you're probably already still on Scratch from earlier, but we want to create a new one. So we want to get rid of that code from earlier. So we just go to the top left and tap create again, and you'll be back to your blank project. Now the first thing you've noticed is that Scratch Cat was not, unfortunately, in my game, my balloon game, so we'll need to delete our cat sprite by tapping on it. So find it at the bottom and you'll see that it highlights the one in the stage that we are using, which is the cat sprite. And we're going to tap it and then tap the little bin on the top right that says delete. Then what we need to do is we need to add our balloon sprite. So we want to tap the cat icon at the bottom right of the screen that's one in, so it's a little cat with a plus above it. And then when you tap that, you're going to get a little menu. we have lots of options here. You can upload sprites, you can draw them yourself, but at the moment we just want to use the little magnifying glass option to search. So tap that. Then you can search for a sprite, but we are making a balloon game, so we want the one that says Balloon 1. It's on the second row down, beside the ballerina and beside the bananas. So if you tap that, that's going to add a balloon sprite onto my stage. We also want a good backdrop. Now you can have this as anything, but it might be good to be able to see the balloons easily, so I wouldn't choose something that's too busy a backdrop. I'm going to click the backdrop button on the bottom right hand side, so it's beside the cat one we just used. It's the one that looks like a little picture with a plus at the top right. And again, you get the same menu that you did for the sprites because you can make your own backgrounds, you can upload them, etc. But we are just going to tap that magnifying glass again. Now you'll see there's lots of different backgrounds that you can choose from. As I said, it's completely up to you what one you would like to use, but I would try and use one that isn't too busy. So I'm going to go for the one that says Wall 1. So I'll give you a little second just to choose your backdrop. Please feel free to pause the video here if you need a little bit more time. The next thing I need to do is make sure that I've clicked on that balloon again, because I'm going to put the code behind the balloon. I don't want it to be on the backdrop, I just want it to be behind that balloon, behind that sprite. So first thing I need to do is code my balloon so that it bounces around the screen. To do this, we want this to start when the game starts, so again we're going back to that fact that we want that when green flag clicked block available. So we want to go to Events, and we want to go to when green flag clicked and take that block over and put it into the middle of the screen. We then want to make sure that our balloon goes to a certain place before it starts to move. So to do this, we're going to go to the blue motion blocks and we're going to scroll down until we get to the one that says go to X, Y. So this one here that says go to X minus 37 and Y 16. Now that's not the numbers we're actually going to use. Yours might say 0, 0. It might sometimes depend on what you've done before or what version of Scratch that you're using, but we're going to drag that over and for the moment put it under when green flag clicked. We're then going to make sure that our balloon's going to point in a direction and then start moving. Okay, so to do this we want to stay in motion, the motion menu, and we want to go to the one that says point in direction 90. And we want to drag this over and click it underneath. Next thing we want to do is we want to make sure we set this not at 90 but probably 45. Now to do this you tap the 90 and there's this little arrow that you can drag around and we want to go to the bit that says 45 and then tap somewhere else on the screen so that that menu disappears. So when my balloon appears, it's going to go to, at the moment, minus 37.16, you don't need to know what that means, and then it's going to point in the direction of 45 degrees. I then want it to move, and I want it to keep moving forever throughout my game before I pop it. So we want to go to a different menu now called the control menu. The control menu is orange. Be careful, it's a similar kind of colour to the events menu, but we want to go to control. And we want to find a block that's called forever. So it's the third one down. And we want to drag this over and clip it underneath the menu that we've already created. Now this block looks a bit funny compared to the other ones. It's got a gap in the middle. And this is because this is a forever loop. So whatever we put inside this block will basically keep going forever and ever and ever and ever until we stop the game. So in this forever loop, I want my movement of my balloon. So I want it to keep moving forever while I'm playing my game. So to do this, if I want it to move, I'm going to go to the motion block, which is the blue one. So back to the one we were using earlier. And I want to find the one that says move 10 steps. So move 10 steps is the one right at the top. I want to drag this down and I want to put it in the middle of that forever block. Now that sounds quite good, but if I start making it move, so if I start tapping my thing, you'll see that it moved, but it went off the screen and it's disappeared, which is not very handy. So I want it to move, but I want it when it gets to an edge of the screen to bounce and come back. So we're going to again stay in that motion menu and we're going to go down till we find the one that says if on edge bounce. And we're going to drag that over and put it under the move 10 steps. Now at any point in this you can test your balloon out. So let's try it. Let's hit that green flag just now and see what happens with our balloon. So it's working quite well. It's appeared where I wanted it to appear. It's then going in the right direction, and then when it moves, it's going to bounce and come back. Now, at the moment, I think the speed's quite good. I don't think it's moving too slowly, but if you did want to change that, you could change the number of steps. So I could change this to 1 and tap out of it, and you can see now it's going really slow. Now that's too slow for me, but then if I change it to 70, and tap out, that's way too fast, okay? So I'm going to go back and put in 10, because I thought 10 was actually quite a good one. I think that's a good speed for me, but you can change this later. You can decide what you want to do. So you can change the code to speed it up or slow it down. Now, what are you noticing at the moment? Well, I'm noticing that the balloon seems to be flipping as it moves around the screen. Now, that's not very handy, as balloons don't move like this in real life. To fix this, we need to click on our balloon sprite at the bottom, and basically above the balloon sprite you'll see that it says balloon 1, and it gives you some information about it, like the size. So this is where you would change the size of the balloon if you wanted to. But we're going to go to the one that says direction, and we're going to tap it. Now your keyboard might come up, and if it comes up you want to tap the bottom right to get rid of it. Now this is telling us what direction the balloon's going to move in, and we've said that it was moving 45 degrees, which is why it's pointing at that. But underneath this little circle, you can see 3 pictures that have come up. We want to tap the one on the right hand side that has a little arrow, curly arrow with a line through it. What this means is that the rotation style, this is what those buttons are, and by clicking that one with a line through it, we're telling it, do not rotate. And that should stop our balloon rotating. And we can practice this by clicking that green flag again. And you can see now my balloon doesn't rotate. It stays up the way like a balloon would do. And it's going round, bouncing off each of the corners like we've coded it to do. If at any point you want to stop your balloon, or stop the game, you can tap the little, basically the little red symbol beside the green flag, and what that does is it allows it to stop. Okay, so let's test that out, make sure it's working correctly, make sure your balloon is bouncing around your screen and it's moving at a good speed for you. Are we happy? Excellent. So the next thing that we want to do, the problem with our code at the moment is that our balloon is always going to start at the same place, and you can try this out by clicking your green flag and keep clicking it. So it's always going to start at the same place and go in the same direction. Now that's not a very fun game. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that every time we play the game, or every time a new balloon appears, we want it to change the X and Y position every time. We want Scratch to pick a random number instead. So we're going to change our balloon's code by adding a bit to make Scratch choose a random number for the location it starts from. To do this, we're going to go to the green menu that's called Operators on the left-hand side. And when we're at that green menu on the left-hand side, we're then going to tap the one that says Pick Random 1 to 10. Now this block is not a square block, it can't go in by itself, it needs to go in one of the circular spaces or the oval spaces. So we want to go to that bit that says X minus 37, and we're going to drop it in there. Now that's telling us, or telling Scratch, to choose a random number between 1 and 10. But actually, we've got a bigger area than that. We want it to choose a number between minus 150, so I'm putting that in the first box, and 150. So in the first oval, I want you to tap and put minus 150, and in the second, I want you to put 150. Now you're good at that, I want you to do the exact same thing, so drag over a pick random block and put it where the 16 is. And you might have to drag your screen along a bit. And again, you want minus 150 and 150. You can zoom out if you want to at this stage so that this all fits on the one screen. Now, if we click our green flag a few times, you should now see that it starts in a random place every time. So that means our code is working. We can also do the same thing with the direction it points in before it moves, and that would be quite handy because we don't want the balloons all going on the same pathway, even if they start in the same place. So we can make that random as well by, again, picking random, putting that block where the 45 is, just below, and this time we're going to change this number to minus 180 and the other number to 180. Again, give this a wee try by clicking your green flag, and you should now see that it goes in different directions each time you click it. Perfect. If we are happy and we're now at the stage where that is done, we're now going to look at changing the colour of our sprite. So at the moment, our sprite is a bit boring. Every time it comes back, it's coming back just as a blue balloon. So we want to allow Scratch to choose a random balloon colour every time, so it isn't always blue. We can do this by adding a purple look block called Change Colour Effect By. So if we go into the look section, looks menu, and we look down for the one that says Change Colour Effect By, and we take this block and we put it under point and direction, so between the forever block and the point and direction block. If you drop this in, there are things you can do on here. We don't want to change the colour, the brightness, or the whirl or brightness or pixelate it. We want to keep it as colour. But again, we want it to be random. We want it to choose a random colour. So we want to go back to that operator's green menu and take the block that says pick random 1 to 10 again. And we're going to put it where that 25 is. Now there's 200 different colours it can choose from, so we're going to put 0 as our first number and 200 as our second number. And that means that every time you hit the green flag, it should change colour. I'm going to give you a little second again for you just to give that a try. If you want to see or try something out or tinker with it to see what happens, maybe try putting the same block but in the forever loop instead. So at the moment I've put it specifically under the point and direction block outside of the forever loop. But if I instead, now this can be a wee bit fiddly, so don't follow this if you think you're maybe not going to be able to get it back. If I now put it inside the forever loop, look what's happening. So now it's forever changing that colour over and over and over again. Now, I don't know about you, but that hurts my head. So I'm going to take that block out, and this is where it takes a little bit of moving around if you have tried this with me. And I'm just going to put everything back to normal so that that change colour block is outside the forever loop and just changes each time our new balloon appears. Pause the video here until we are ready to carry on with our next section where we're going to start coding popping the balloons. So now that we have our balloon, it's moving the right way and it's also changing colour, we need to allow the balloons to be popped as at the moment nothing happens. If we click on our balloon sprite, so again making sure we're in the balloon sprite and we're not on the background, what we now want to do is we want to go to the costumes tab. So this is on the top left hand side where it currently says code. There's different tabs along the top for costumes and sounds. We want to tap the one that says costumes. Now when we go into this, we can see that our balloon actually has 3 costume types. We don't really need the other 2. We just want to leave 1 balloon costume. So what we can do is we can tap each of the other ones and tap the little bin that appears on the top right of the picture. Now make sure you left the balloon that we had before, so the blue balloon, we're leaving that there. And what we want to now do is add a new costume by tapping the cat at the bottom left hand side. And instead of tapping the magnifying glass, we're going to tap the little paintbrush this time. This then opens a new costume just below the blue balloon one. And this is where we're going to make what it's going to look like when our balloon is burst. So we're going to need a paintbrush for this. At the moment, it's just got a little pointer selected, a mouse pointer. If we look on the left-hand side, you can click through these different things on the left. Now we want the paintbrush, which is the third one down. And once we have our paintbrush, we then want to tap the button or the block that says fill at the top. So this one here, and you should get lots of different colours. I want my balloon colour, or my burst balloon colour, to be black, so I'm just going to take the slider at the bottom and move it right down to black for this, but you can choose any colour that you want. When you've chosen your colour, you want to tap into the middle of the screen. Now it might leave a little dot. To get rid of it, you can either use the eraser, which is right below the paintbrush, or you can tap the back button at the top. What we want to think about now is how would a balloon look if it is burst? Now, when I've seen balloons in cartoons that have burst, I think they all the bits spray out all around it. So my burst balloon is going to look like this. So basically little lines going in all the different directions. Again, you can do whatever you want for this, and you can also change the size of it by tapping on the right hand side where it says 100, and you can change that number to something different if you want it to be a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger instead. So I'm going to get you to pause here again until you've got your costume for a burst balloon. Now, once you've finished drawing it, we actually need to call it something. At the moment, it's just called Costume 1, and that's not very easy to use. So we want to tap at the top under Costumes, where it says Costume 1. I want to delete that, and I want to type in Burst. Again, get rid of your keyboard, and that'll name it as Bursts. Now we're going to come back out of this costume tab and go back to code. So once you've got your blue balloon and your second picture is your burst balloon, you want to tap code. Now at the moment you can see on my stage it's the burst balloon that we have. So we've got an issue in that it now looks like our balloon is burst all the time. So we need to tell the program that we want the whole balloon to start with. So under green flag clicked, we want to put a look block, so a purple block, that says at the start of my game, I want the costume to be switched to the balloon one. So we're going to go to looks, and we're going to go down to the bit that says switch costume to, and we're going to drag this over and put it under when green flag clicked. At the moment it says burst, so we need to tap that and change it to the one that says balloon. And you should see when you then tap your green flag that it changes to the balloon. Once we've done that, the next stage is we want to burst the balloon, because at the moment it is bouncing off the walls, but it's not going to burst at any point. Now, to allow the player to burst the balloon, we need to add some code. We don't just want to add any code, like when sprite clicked. You can do that if you want. You could do that on a computer, a laptop, or on your iPad. But we actually want to use video sensing for this game. So we're going to do what we did earlier on. We're going to go to the bottom left of the screen to that extensions menu, so the two little blocks with a plus above it. We're going to tap it, and we want to find the extension set of blocks that is called video sensing, like we did earlier. Again, it's going to ask you, would you like to access the camera? Would you let Scratch access your camera? You're going to say allow, and you'll see that behind whatever screen you've got, your camera starts to open again. Now we want to make sure it says turn video on as soon as we click the green flag. So we're going to drag that block over and put it under the green flag. So turn video on, drag over and put it above the switch costume and below the when green flag clicked block. Once we've done that, we also want to set the transparency as we talked about earlier. So I'm going to drag over the set transparency of video to 50, and I'm just going to put it under the turn video on. Now you can decide what you want to do here. I might change mine to 75, so to make it a little bit more opaque, but you can still see my hand in the background. It's up to you what you want to set this as just now. Because what you want to make sure with this one is you don't want it to be completely blacked out the screen, because you want to be able to see yourself so that you'll be able to see where you're aiming when you're trying to pop the balloons, but also you want to have your nice backdrop there, so you don't want it to be 0 either. So not 0, not 100, but you can choose something in between. Next, we need to say what we want to happen when we touch the balloon. To do this, we're going to add a separate bit of code. We're going to start with that block we spoke about before, when video motion is more than 10. So this one here. So if I grab this and take it, I'm going to put it under the block that I already have. So remember, you can grab the screen and move it around. I'm going to move it around a wee bit, and I'm going to put when video motion more than 10. Now, as we spoke about before, what I want this to do is tell the program to switch the sprite costume to burst whenever it feels any video motion over the top of it. So we're going to go to a purple block. So we're going to go to looks, and we're going to tap the one that says switch costume to burst, and we're going to put it under when video motion more than 10. So what this means is when I wave my hand or when my hand hits the balloon, then it switches the costume to the burst one instead. Now remember, we talked about before that you might want to test this because you don't want it to go off straight away. If it's too sensitive, your video, it might be that you burst the balloon without even trying. So you might want to change that number from 10 and make it higher. You can also put your iPad down so it only sees the ceiling, and just like mine does, and you can then wave your hand over the top of it to pop the balloons. If you want to still be in the video, you might want to increase that number from 10 to a bit higher so that it doesn't set it off straight away if you move slightly or you blink. We also want to add a popping sound when the balloon bursts. So we're going to go to the sound light purple menu here, and we're going to drag over the block that says start sound pop. Now you can change the so you can change what it says if you want to. I'm just going to turn that down a bit, or I'm going to take this one off just now just because it's going to make too much noise for me. But for you, I want you to add that start sound pop button underneath. What I'd also like you to do at the moment is, can you turn your volume down for me on your iPad? So can you make sure your volume is all the way down so that it's not annoying everyone else in the class? Now with mine that's not going to work because I'm recording this video, so I'm just going to keep the start sound pop outside of this at the moment so that it doesn't work, but I want you to make sure that you've actually put it underneath here. Okay. Now you can change that pop to something else. There's different things you can do later on, like you could record a sound or you could add different ones in, but at the moment, just to make things simpler, we're going to keep it as pop. So now what I want you to do is take time to test out your project. When you click the green flag, can you pop the balloon? Does it work as you expect? So give that a try just now. There we go. So I've managed to pop mine. Once it's popped, I can start again. And whenever I hit it, it should pop. So give that a try it out for yourself, make sure your code is working correctly. Now, has anyone noticed what problem we have here? Well, once we pop it, the popped version stays and it just keeps bouncing around, which we don't really want to happen. So again, I'll show you there. If I pop it, it just keeps popping and basically bouncing around the screen as is. So we don't really want that to happen. What we want to make sure is that when the balloon is popped, it shows the burst costume for a short period of time, and then we want it to hide itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to get it to wait a couple of seconds, or not even a couple of seconds, less than a second once we pop it, and then we want it to hide itself. So to do this, we're going to go to the control menu. So it's the darker orange one. We're going to take the top block that says wait 1 second, and you're going to put it under the start sound block, but for me I'm going to put it under the switch costume block just because I don't want it popping all the time over the top. And then what I want you to do is I want you to find the block under looks that says hide, so the purple menu and hide. So give that a try, pop it, waits a second, disappears. Now I think when a balloon actually bursts, it doesn't wait around for that long. So I'm going to tap that 1 and I'm going to change it to 0.3. So that's a third of a second basically. And I'm going to try it again. If you give that a try and you try popping your balloon again to check it works properly, you might notice a problem. We've deleted it. We've told it that once it's popped, it needs to hide. Have we told it that it needs to show itself again? No, we haven't. So what we need to do now is we need to actually make sure that once it disappears, it actually comes back at the start again. So we need to take the show block, which is in the looks menu, so we're back in that purple menu, and we're going to take the block that says show, and we're going to make sure that at the start of the game, when the flag is clicked, it shows again. So we're going to take that show and we're going to put it up here. So let's try it again and see if it's working properly. So I'm going to pop my balloon, it's going to disappear, that's fine, but then when I click the green flag again, it's going to reappear. Perfect. Again, try popping your balloon and make sure that it is now working properly. Now we want to make this game a game, so we have to add a score, as that'll make things a little bit more interesting. If you did our Halloween or festive code-alongs, you'll know that to add a score, you need a place to put it. So we need to create a new variable, which is called score. To do this, we're going to go to the orange variables menu on the left hand side, and we're going to tap the button that says make a variable. It's then going to come up with this option where it says new variable, give your new variable a name, and we are going to call it score. And then you're going to tap away your keyboard. So tap the bottom right hand side, leave it as for all sprites, and click OK. So make a variable, type in the name score, and click OK. Once you do that, you can then see that score has been added as a variable. Now that's actually not done anything apart from create that variable, and on the top left hand side of your screen, your stage, you can now see it says score and 0. Now if we play it at the moment, it's not going to do anything. When a new game starts, we want to make sure that it resets back to 0 again. So we need to take the set my variable to 0 block and put it at the start of our code under when green flag clicked. So we're going to take set my variable to 0, and under when green flag clicked, we're going to drop that. Now at the moment it says set my variable to 0. We need to tap that and we need to change the drop down to score. So that tells the game, when I start a new game, I want it to start at 0. That score variable needs to go back to 0. Once we've done that, whenever I pop a balloon, I want it to add 1 to my score. So down where we have the code for the balloon popping, which was this code down here, what we then want it to do is we want it to add or change the variable by 1. So we want to go to change my variable by 1 block, which is this one here, and we want to add it in underneath. So just above hide, just below the wait, 0.3 seconds. Again, we need to change my variable to score. If you don't do this, then you'll notice that it doesn't actually change your variable or doesn't change your score each time you pop the balloon. So let's test it. So let's stop the program and then hit the green flag. When my balloon comes up, I'm going to pop the balloon and it's added 1 to my score. Now you'll notice anytime I wave over the screen, it's also going to add to my score because it thinks I'm popping another balloon, but there's actually no new balloons there, and that's the next thing we're going to look at. So make sure your score is changing, and now what we're going to do is we're going to make it a little bit harder. So it's not really a game if there's only one balloon that you need to pop, so we're going to add lots more. Now one simple way to get lots of balloons is just to hold down the sprite button, or the balloon button, and tick duplicate. Now this is okay if you only want a few, but what if you need 20? Or what if you need 100? Are you really going to sit and duplicate it that many times? Well, a better way of getting lots of balloons is to clone the balloon sprite. Now this bit is quite confusing, so I want you to follow me really carefully. If you get a bit mixed up, get your teacher to take the video back to the start again, or this section again, and watch it again, and make sure you're pausing as you go through so that everyone is at the same place. First, we're going to move a lot of our code for the balloon when the green flag clicked to new. I'm going to add a block that's called a clone control block, and I'm going to take most of that information and I'm going to put it under that clone control block. To do this, we need to get that when I start as a clone block first. So we're going to go to the dark orange menu, it's called control. And what I want to do there is I want to find the one that says start as a clone, when I start as a clone. So I'm going to take this block out, and this is actually going to sit separately. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move my other ones down a wee bit to give me a little bit of extra room. And I'm going to put this underneath just so I don't have to move the rest of the code as far. So once I've got that underneath, I'm then going to go up and drag from under set score to 0, and I'm going to take that down and clip it into the new block. So I'm going to take it from the bit that says show up here. So as you basically click it, you'll be able to lift all this code, and you're going to move it down and put it under the when I start as a clone. So you're taking it from here down to here. And then once you're done, you can drag it up a bit. Okay, so all of that code, the show code down, all got moved under this new block. So I want you to give that a try just now, please. We then need to add code to create 20 balloon clones when we start the game. So at the top, under the green flag clicked and set score to 0, we're going to add a couple of new blocks. So we're going to add another hide block. So we're going to go to looks in the purple menu, go down and take the hide block over and put it under set score to 0. We're then wanting, every time we do the game, we want it to basically create 20 balloons is what we're going to say. So we want to find, again in control, so the orange menu, and we want to find the block that says repeat 10 and put it underneath. Now this looks quite like that forever block that we used earlier, which has got a gap in the middle for other blocks to go in. And at the moment, we want it not to create 10 balloons, we want it to make 20. Now you can change this to what you want. If you only want it to make 5 balloons or 10 balloons or 20, maybe later when you change your game you might want it to make 100. It's completely up to you. So you set that score of how many you want. We then want it to clone the balloon, okay? So we want to go to stay in that control menu, and we want to go down to the bit where it's talking about clones, and we want to click the block that says create clone of myself and go over here and drop it into that repeat. So what that means is when the code gets to this bit, the program is going to say, right, it wants me to create, and the balloon's at the bottom with all the information about the balloon, and it's going to basically take that clone of the balloon and it's going to make 20 of them. Now you can test this, okay? So test your project. When the green flag is clicked, your balloons are going to basically all appear. You can pop them, and when they all disappear, there shouldn't be any left, okay, at the end there. And they'll bounce around the screen randomly, just like they did before. So all 20 will appear, they'll bounce around, and then you should be able to then get rid of them. Okay. Now, if you're like me, you won't just want one set of 20 balloons because that goes over quite quickly. What we want to do is we want it to keep making sets of 5 or 10 or 20 balloons at a time. So to do this, we're going to use that forever loop that we used before, and we're going to put it round that repeat instead. Now you can play about with this if you want to, but what we're going to do is go to control, get that forever block that we used before, and you're going to have to put it beside it for now. Take that repeat, put it inside the forever block. I know this is getting a little bit more confusing, so do feel free to repeat, and then take that forever block and put it back. So now what should happen is 20 balloons get made. You can start popping them, and as you pop them, more get made. So another 20 at a time, and we'll stop that there. So you can also play about with this a bit. You can add in some waiting time if that's too hard. Maybe you want it to wait a few seconds before more balloons appear, because at the moment it's just going to keep producing 20, 20, 20 at a time. So what we could do is we could go to events, or control, sorry, and go to wait, and you could put that wait in there as well. So you can get it to wait. So you can put it here or here, you can try it out. So let's say I put it here at the moment, and I change that to 4 seconds. Get it to start. Creates balloons, it's created 20, it's going to wait 4 seconds, and then it's going to produce another 20. And I'm then going to hit those. So you can play about with it, you can decide what you want. I might get it to do it every 2 seconds, I think. That might be fair. So play about with it and see what works for you. The next thing that we want to do is we want to add a timer. So we want to make the game a bit more interesting. You might want to only give your player 10 seconds to pop as many balloons as possible. You can do this using another variable to store the remaining time left. So first things first, we don't actually want to be under the balloon anymore. We want to be on the stage or backdrop. So click the backdrop on the right hand side. Now don't worry, your balloon code hasn't disappeared, it's just under your balloon sprite. We're just under the backdrop now, so it should be empty at the moment, and you're going to follow me to add some code for a timer that would start at 10 seconds and count down every second before the game stops at 0. So what we want to do is when the green flag is clicked at the start of the game, so we're going to go events, so yellow menu when green flag clicked, and we're going to set the time to 10. So to do that, we're going to go down to the variables menu, and we're going to have to make a new variable. So we're going to make a new variable called time, just like we did for score. And you'll see that that basically appears here, just underscore at the top. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take the block that says set my variable to 0, and we're going to change my variable to time. We want it to start at 10 seconds, so we're going to put in 10 here, but you could do whatever you want. It could be 60 seconds, it could be 70, 100, it's up to you, but we're going to do 10 just at the moment, but you can come back and change that later. And once it's set the time to 10, we want it to then count down. Now, to get it to count down, you have to use a little bit of code. So we want to get it to wait. So we're going to go to control and we're going to get wait 1 second, and we're just going to put it below here at the moment. We're not going to attach it. We're going to get it to wait 1 second and then change the time by 1. So we want to go back to variables, which is our dark orange menu, and change my variable by 1 and put it underneath. So we want to change my variable to time, and we want to change 1 to -1. Now what that means is every second it's going to take 1 second off the time. So it waits 1 second and then it takes 1 off. We want it to repeat that until it gets to 0. So we need a repeating block from control. So the control light orange menu, take that repeating block and put it under set, and set time to 10 block, and then take this bit we just made and put it in the middle. Now, we've told it to repeat 10 times, but we actually want it to repeat until the time gets to 0. So, this is where it gets slightly more complicated. We want to go into that green operators block, and again, try and find the one that has a little equal sign. So something equals 50 here. We're going to take this over, and we're going to put it where the repeats is. Now, actually, I've used the wrong one here. Made a little mistake. So I'm going to delete that repeat block, because actually I don't need that. I want the one that says repeat until. So you're actually going to go down until you find the repeat until block, put that in, and put that in. Apologies about that. So we've got a repeat until and then a blank space, and then inside that, wait 1 second, change time by -1, so take away 1 second. If we now go to our green menu, we're going to get the one that has the equals in the middle, and we're going to put that in this bit here. Now we want it to be when the time equals 0, so we're going to change 50 to 0, and we're going to go back to variables, so that variables dark orange menu, and take one of the ones that says time and put it there. So let's run through this. When the green flag is clicked, we're going to have 10 seconds. Time's going to be set to 10. It's going to repeat every 1 second, taking a -1 off, until it gets to 0. Now the reason we've done this rather than put repeat 10 times is you might want to change the time. You might not want it to always be 10. So it means that if you want to change the time, you can actually just change this one number here. If I used the block I used wrongly before, what would happen is even if you increase the time to 50 seconds or 100 seconds, it would actually stop after 10 because we were only repeating it 10 times. So that's why I've made this a little bit more complicated so that you can change the time later on if you want to. Now once all that's done and it's got to 0, we actually want it to stop the game. To stop the game, we're going to go to events, or control, so control, and if we scroll down there, you're going to find the one that says stop all. And we're going to take this over and put it underneath when green flag clicked. So I want you to double check now that you have the right code under your backdrop. And one more thing that you might want to do, I don't know if you know how to do this, on your stage, there's the bit that says time. I can actually drag this round. So I can drag this and put it anywhere I want. So I can put it at the bottom right, top right, wherever I'd like. I'm actually going to put it next to score. And I'm also, when you tap it, you'll notice, or you start to drag it, you'll notice this little menu comes up. You can have it so that it has a large readout. And what that does is it changes it so it's just actually the number. So it's going to count down from 10 and go to 0 just as a little number rather than saying time beside it. So you can decide what you'd like, how you'd like it to be displayed. Now I want you to play your game. How many points can you score? Remember, you can do it like me and just use your hand over the camera, or you can point your camera at you, and if you're far away, you could stand up or use your hands or arms to pop the balloon. Try it out loads of different ways and see what works best for you. One final little tip for playing your game is you can tap the right hand bit at the top, has 4 arrows pointing in different directions. If you tap that, it's going to make your game full screen. And again, when you tap the green flag, you should be able to pop your balloons. So give it a try, 10 seconds, see how it works, what works well, what doesn't, and then come back, pause the video, play again when you're ready. Now, something here you might have noticed is that actually you're not popping as many balloons as what comes up on the screen. Your score might be like mine, it might be 534 rather than the actual number of balloons that have been popped. So this is a little challenge for you. Can you look back through your code and figure out a way so that it only adds 1 to the score if you actually pop a balloon rather than just when you're moving on the screen? I just lastly want to go through a couple of little things about how you can challenge yourself now with this game. So although we've made it together, I want you to now go away and try tinkering with your game. So some things you can do if your game is too easy at the moment is you can give players less time. You could have more balloons, you could make the balloons move faster, you could make the balloons smaller, or you could decrease the sensitivity of your camera. Or if we said, as we said before, you could actually work out how you get it so that it isn't just giving you points for motion, where it's actually giving you points only if you pop a balloon. So maybe have a look at things like the if statements that are in there if you're good at using Scratch. Other things you can do to add some extra challenge. You could maybe add other objects to your game. You could add good objects like donuts that give you lots of points, or you could add bad objects like bats that take points away if you touch them. You need to think about the objects you're adding and think about how many will there be, how big will they be, how will they move, will they just appear and disappear? How many points would you score or lose for clicking on them or basically having motion over the top of them? Will it move faster or slower than the balloons move? What will it look like? What will it sound like when it's being clicked? There's lots of different things that you can do there. Another thing you could do, if you're done doing that and you've made your game as good as you can, you could make a new challenge. Maybe make a new game using what you know now about video sensing. Some ideas might be, and this is one I was thinking of using for this live lesson, was that you could use movement to play some musical instruments in a band. So you could have it where you're in the middle of the screen and at the top left hand side you have a guitar, at the top right hand side you have a drum, at the bottom left you might have a tambourine, at the bottom right you might have a trumpet or something like that. And you could have it so that when you hit any of those it starts to play music or it plays a note, and you could actually make your own songs or your own band using it. Another one that I've seen before is you can make yourself a goalie. So you could be in the virtual world as the goalie and you could have it set so that the ball comes towards you and you have to try and save the ball. So if you hit the ball, you get a point because you've saved it from going in the net. Whereas if you didn't, then it means you're -1 or it's taken a point away. There's lots of different things that you could do using video sensing. You could do a keepy-uppy game, you could do a Pong game, but with your actual hands moving it. It's completely up to you. The possibilities are endless. And if you don't want to make a game, maybe you want to make an animation. Maybe you want to do a story that is involved where you have to wave your hand over different things or different characters to make them say things. It's completely up to you what you want to do with this. So I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed using video sensing to create a game in Scratch. Please get your teacher to let me know how you got on by tagging me on Twitter or X at one or all of the accounts that I've shown on here, or by sending me an email and I can provide you with a certificate for your class for having completed this code along. I'd especially love to see if you've then gone on and changed anything with your game or with your code to make it better or more challenging, or if you've managed to solve that little problem that we had earlier as well. I'd love to hear it. If you want to do more coding using Scratch, please look at some tutorials on the Raspberry Pi Foundation Project's website. You can scan the QR code here and there's lots of different options available, including ones that have video sensing in them as well. Or you can complete our other code along videos, like our festive Codemas live code along that we did, some of our festive challenges that we did. I mean, they can be used any point in the year, although they're festive themed, you could change them a little bit. or even our Halloween codes along where we made a game using, where you had to catch the apple or the candy using the bat. So try some of those out. They're all slightly different in different ways, but they'll all help you build your confidence with Scratch and hopefully really enjoy coding. So I hope you had a good time. I'll hopefully see you all again at the next one. Bye for now.